Hello and welcome back to Raise the Praise. Y'all, we've been talking about having the courage to heal through forgiveness, through faith, and through our health. And remember, courage is the ability to do something that frightens you, doing something in the face of pain or grief. And healing means to cause to become sound or healthy again. So for me, having the courage to heal means even in the face of fear, pain, or grief, I'm choosing to heal so that I can walk in freedom. And that freedom comes through forgiveness, faith, and our health. So as women of faith, we know the power of forgiveness. However, the process of forgiving others and even ourselves is just that, a process. God gives us the courage to heal, to find freedom in our health, to find freedom in every area of our lives so that we can thrive and do the things He's calling us to do. So today, I am so excited. This is episode 25, and I have my dearest little sister, Jabrita. Oh my gosh, wait until we tell you guys how we've come to become sisters, right? But she's going to be talking about, her journey, her story about having the courage to heal. But let me just tell you real quick, as a quick intro, this little sis, Jabrita, she is an anointed, appointed poet of God. I coined that for her, right? Who lifts whatever spirit you're in to the next level because of the symphony of words that she strings together. It is truly an anointing. So welcome to the show, Jabrita.
Thank you so much for that phenomenal. Oh my God, I'm sitting here like, oh my God. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, big sis. I just truly love you. Thank you for the honor for allowing me to be a guest on this podcast and just sharing my story and just basking in the light of you. So thank you so much.
I'm more honored. Let me just tell y'all, if y'all could see her right now, to see her beautiful, her smile, her face, she just lifts up the room. I wish y'all could see her right now. But so as we jump into this, I came to know Jabrita through a program that we are in. It's called Purpose to Platform. That's a whole nother podcast in itself, just because of what God has done in the group with our P2P sisters. We call ourselves P2P, Purpose to Platform Sisters. And this is how I met her. But let me tell you about Divine Connections, because there's about 140 of us or so in that group. And I have connected with a handful of women. Love them all, but when you have that divine connection, I never knew that she would be my little sis, and I'm so grateful, so grateful. So as we jump into this, little sis, tell us a little bit about who you are right now, today.
Today, I would have to say that I am truly transformed, truly transformed. I don't even know if that is a word high enough to describe the level of joy that I now live in, the level of peace, the level of clarity, the liftedness that I feel mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and even financially. I'm just in a more sound place in my life, a more healed and delivered space of my life. And I'm truly grateful to have had this experience, as you described, in P2P with the divine connections, and just allowing God to truly manifest His healing in this space, in this season of my life. So I'd have to describe as true transformation, as truly being transformed.
And we know that transformation doesn't happen until we face our truth. At least that's what I believe. Once we embrace our truth of where we've been, what experiences we've had to form and shape the women we are today, that's when true transformation happens, I believe. So I want to take us back, first of all, and y'all are going to hear a little bit more about what she's actually doing in just a few minutes. But let's go back, because I know you and I have shared a lot of deep intimate thoughts, and we cried together. You witnessed the purging that happened with me on that call, and I've shared with my audience about that too. And there's just nothing like that freedom that you feel once you totally release and surrender to God. So let's take it back for you. You talk about generational curses and things like that. What does that mean?
So generational curses are the repetitive things that, the repetitive things, cycles, circumstances that we find ourselves in. They are usually not the thing that you have identified as your own, right? Um, so usually it's something that you can look at in your family, whether it be the women in your family or the relationships in your family, or it could be financial, it could be, between the relationships between mothers and daughters, it could be an array of different things. But generational curses is usually something that you have been able to identify within your family that didn't just or doesn't just affect you, right? It affects how you do something, how you show up. It also reflects who you show up as. If you are free, if you are still bound, if you are still in the trenches of that experience. And it also shows up, by way of how we associate ourselves with other people. And a lot of times people don't realize that generational curses are things that we truly sometimes just fail to acknowledge, the things that we truly hide because we're still dealing with our own shame or our own guilt. And we just haven't had the courage to face it the way it needs to be faced.
Yeah.
But generational curses can also be broken, right? They don't have to be yours. They don't have to, you don't have to remain in the pit of that hell. There is a way out.
There is a way out, and I'm so grateful. So now here's where I want us to get to the meat of this, because you got out. And I want us to hear your story of how you had the courage to get out. You had the courage to face that generational curse so that you could break it, right? And just give us a little bit of your journey of actually recognizing that, hey, you were in a cycle of that curse, because we understand that that's where the enemy wants us to stay. But share your Courage to Heal story with us.
Wow. I don't even know which part to share, but I'm going to share the thing that comes up the most. And I have to have these conversations often with my family, because I want to always make sure that I'm honoring the space of which I'm telling the story from. Because while I understand that I have been healed and I have been delivered, I do know that those are all places that people are still being healed and delivered from, right? And so in sharing my story, I want to always make sure that I'm honoring the people in which the story has that shared story, or that shared story or their shared experience, is transferred from, right? So growing up, we dealt with a lot of, abuse, right? There was a lot of abuse in my household, domestically, as a child growing up. And I saw a lot of things that most children probably now, of course, seeing the way of the world, but most children probably at that time would not have experienced, or if they were, they didn't understand it as what I had the opportunity of being able to identify as abuse in my life. And though I was not directly abused by my parents, I was indirectly affected by the abuse that carried over into their relationship. And from alcoholism and drug addiction of my father, from the separation between my parents, from the instability in my family, there was a lot of things that I dealt with, living in a very impoverished, stricken community with very little to no resources. There was a lot of things that I was exposed to very early on, a lot of things that I saw very early on that affected me, but I didn't understand the depth of the affection the impact that I was affected by until maybe, let's say, around um, mid 20s, mid 20s. And sometimes, we don't really realize that these are generational curses. We don't realize that these are cycles. We just, go throughout our life. We do the things that our parents teach us and the things that we see. More is caught than taught in so many ways. And as a result of that, there's, as I began to get into relationships, I got into relationships that were abusive. I got into relationships with with men that were also, abusers of alcohol. And I found myself in a very bad space in this one particular place of my life where, and I won't go deep into detail about that experience, but this experience changed my life, and it changed my life in such a way that I found myself going in a downward spiral into alcoholism, into, self-sabotaging, into low self-esteem, the lowest points of broken confidence and broken identity, struggling with shame and guilt, right? And then what I found was that I was medicating those things through, the church. I was medicating those things, putting bandages in places that I had not learned how to surrender to God, to give him that space to heal. And so, in my experience of being indirectly affected by the abuse that I witnessed in my household as a child, I was 23 years old when I had my first child. And I remember the encounter of this experience that I'm speaking of when I found myself, covered in blood. I found myself, I had blacked out. And rather than someone actually that I knew witnessed this experience come to my rescue, what they did in turn was they began to go and tell others about the experience and yield no help. And so I was 23 years old when that experience happened to me, and that changed my life. It changed my life because I have always been a lover of God, always been a lover of Christ, always sought the best in people. And in that experience, what I needed rescue, and there was no rescue available to me. So I was 26 years old when my brother said, sis, I think you should go to therapy. And so how many of you all know that the experiences that we encounter are not our own? There's always somebody witnessing. And I was the protector in my relationship with my brother. So a lot of things that I saw, that I experienced, that I encountered, I shielded him. I was the one that took those bullets. And so a lot of things he don't recall, a lot of things he don't remember, but the things that he does remember, I was the one emotionally scarred the most through those experiences. And so my experience that kind of led me into a downward spiral of alcoholism and, just this opposite life of what I had known with growing up in the church and different things like that was I truly felt rejected. And that rejection took me down a road that I stopped caring about myself. I stopped caring about the outcome of my life. I stopped caring about how it affected or impacted the relationships around me. And though I know people knew I was better than where I was, I didn't know. Um, so
Yeah, right there, sis, because when you said people, it was almost like people didn't see you, right? I resonate with that when you said um, you are a lover of God, you knew God, all this happened, but yet and still you went into this downward spiral. And the reason why I wanted to pause is because we as women of faith, we have to understand, yeah, we know God. And when these experiences happen, who do we turn to? Just like you, I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know who to that I could talk to because I too was raised in the church, right? And I'm thankful for that. But when I needed somebody to see me the most, I didn't have anybody, right? So when you talk about your story, first of all, thank God that we can share our stories now, because we are not here to weaponize our stories. We are not here to draw shame on anybody. It's our story. And until we tell our story to release, that's why I truly believe we can allow forgiveness. We can allow our faith to come and help us to get to the other side of this. And the fact that you said more is caught than taught, nobody taught us how to deal with what we're dealing with, these experiences, and the fact that the lack of self-worth, but you kept showing up as whoever you were, albeit through alcoholism or whatever the case may be. You still showed up, and you knew, people knew there was better in you. But how do I get to the better me when I'm in this downward spiral, not having someone to talk to say, hey, I need rescuing? I've rescued so many others, like you were talking about your brother. What about me? Who's going to rescue me? So I just wanted to pause right there, because a lot of times we think, oh, this happens when we're in the world. We're not saved. Because we are saved and God has called us his daughters, then we don't go through stuff like this. But even in the midst, God has a reason. He's intentional. And I know for us to get to where we are now, praise God, that we can share this story because we're going to help somebody else. So I had to just pause right there, because more is caught than was taught. Being raised in the church, we knew what the word said, but who's going to rescue me? I'm in my early 20s, and I was in my early teens. So I just wanted to pause there and just say, surrendering to God doesn't shield you from the bad things happening in your life. I wanted to make that clear. And something else you said, and I always say this: Jesus plus therapy equals healing. So let's just pick up your story from there, when you talked about you were medicating through the church. You couldn't get it. Everything that you need wasn't coming by way of the church. So I'll hush and let you kind of finish your story. But I wanted to pause there because I want to make sure everybody understand that just because you're of Christ and Christ lives in you, and some things we have hidden for years, and we can't be our great self because we've not acknowledged that part. Acknowledging it does not mean that you have to go back to it. It's in order to really, I believe, coming to your greatness of what God is calling us to. And I can't wait to get to that part, because some things have happened since then. So I'm going to let you continue on.
Absolutely, sis. I just wanted to pick back up on what you were saying in terms of, that experience, right? We do, as women of faith, we do medicate a lot through the church. And what we have to realize is that God is beyond the four walls. God uses his people and different modalities of healing to bring the holistic approach to your life. And so it doesn't matter the situations or the circumstances in which we are in or we find ourselves in. The truth of the matter is that help is available. And so though, conversations around therapy are not something that we are accustomed to growing up, in poor communities, growing up in Baptist churches, growing up, where the traditions are performed greater than the relationship of understanding who Christ truly is in your life. And so, I was going through all of the antics of, what the church requires, right? But had not understood true holiness, had not understood true relationship. I had the religion down pat. But there is a difference between religion and relationship. And, though I'm truly grateful for my journey, I'm truly honored that God chose me to carry the magnitude of weight that he chose me to carry. But I know that it was all for an appointed time. So going back to, that experience, the young lady who actually witnessed this encounter, rather than her calling the police or rather than her coming to my rescue, She went to the church and she began to pronounce my business across the pews. And that really did something to me. It did something to me in numerous ways, because my whole life, no matter what I experienced in my household, no matter what I witnessed between my parents, the depth of my love for family and God was immeasurable, immeasurable. So it impacted my ability to see the church in the power in which it is supposed to be represented, right? It also allowed me to understand that that was also a broken woman who also did not have the rescue when she needed rescue, because a healed woman knows when there are other women who need to be healed. And so as a result of that, I forgave her, because it was for me to understand that she was broken as well. So I had to learn how to extend grace to this woman, because she did not know how to show up for herself. Therefore, she could not show up for me. And so, in that experience, many years later, God revealed so many things to me and showed me truly who I was. But there was a journey that I had to go through. There was a journey that I had to take. There was a lot of, lows, but God, in his infinite wisdom, showed me exposure after exposure after exposure, where he was calling, what he was requiring, and what I needed to do to get to the transformation that you see today. So,
Yes. Woo! My God. You know that saying, we don't look like what we've been through. I never really understood that until, just accepting, really, when you reflect and you think, my God, that was me. To look back over our lives and see where we are now, all I can say is thank you, God. Thank you, God. And when you shared about the hurt, and I've shared this before on the podcast, I forgave, those that harmed me. Um, and I forgave with my heart. But my hurt, the heart wasn't healed. And I truly believe only God can do that. And because God has, I allowed him, I opened my heart up to God, say, God, I need you to heal me, right? From the hurt. Because I believe true hurt comes from the people that you love. Because if it was some Joe Blow somewhere that, I can get over that, but that deep hurt, because you're in relationship with somebody, whether it's a close sister friend, it could be a church friend, whoever it is, can't nobody hurt you that deeply without love in some form or fashion. So when you shared that, you had to release that and forgive her, and extend grace to her. So many of us have a hard time forgiving, and we say that, oh, I'll forgive you because I want to see Jesus. But until you truly forgive with your heart and you allow God to release you from the hurt, and a lot of times that's a journey. That's not just speaking words. You got to do some work, right? And so I love that you said, forgiveness. We are called to forgive as many times as it takes. Doesn't matter how many times, right? Especially people of faith. But that forgiveness is not always easy. But truly, forgiveness is for us. Because had you not forgave, right? Who knows where you would be? Who knows where I would be? But once true forgiveness happens and we allow God to do that surgery on our hearts, now we're free to be us. I'm free to be me. There are no chains, there's no bondage. There is nothing that can destroy me anymore. Not my thoughts, not my feelings, not my memories, right? Because God has set us free, and whom the Son is set free, we're free indeed. So let's go forward to now. You've released that. You're walking in freedom. You're living your best life now. Take us to the point where you truly realize that God has a plan and a purpose for your life, and everything that has happened thus far that has given you the courage to accept God's healing, to walk in your calling now.
So the funny thing is, sis, that if I'm being completely honest and completely transparent, I was 12 years old when I heard the call of God on my life. And it was unusual for children at that particular time to understand what their call was. So I've always had the connection with God, right? And though I didn't understand at that time what God was doing and that he had truly chose me for a greater purpose, I knew that what I was around didn't look like what I was hearing from God. I knew that the church that I was going to, my spirit yearned for more. And I remember praying. I remember hearing my aunt one time, she was in prayer and she began to speak, in this tongue. And I said, oh my God, what is that? So I didn't understand it, but I talked to her about it, and she said, well, my family calls me Pumpkin. So if you ever hear me refer to Pumpkin, it's because my family refers to me as Pumpkin. And so she said, Pumpkin, she said, she told me what it was. And I said, well, how do you get it? How do you receive that? Because the only thing that I can associate the spirit of tongues to was the fire of God, the manifestation of the fire, right? And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I want it. And so, as we had the conversation and she talked to me about it, she said, you pray and you ask God for it. And so I remember, I was, even when I remember, none of the friends that I went to school with, none of them knew the things that I was experiencing in my household. None of them knew, the things that we had gone through or were going through. In fact, it was the house that all the people wanted to be at, right? And I remember going to church with one of my school friends, and I was in a Baptist church at this time, and she was in a Pentecostal church. And the Pentecostal church, they go all the way in, right? And so these people were, they were shouting and they was doing all these things, and I was like, oh, okay, God, I want to go deeper. But what I realized now is that God was calling me deeper even as a child. God was calling me deeper then. And though I had to have my experience, and though I had to go through the things that I had to go through, God was with me through it all. He was with me through it all. And the things that should have swallowed me up, the things that should have kept me depressed, the things that should have kept me bound to those generational curses, God was with me through it all. And as a result of him being with me through it all is the reason why I am now transformed. Because I understood, and it's funny because a few years ago, how you grow up and you hear all of these, this church talk about different things, and, to whom God, what is it? What is it? To whom much is given, much is required.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just out of the blue one day, I said, God, I know that it's true, but what do you require of Jabrita? What is it that you need from me? Specifically from me, because my requirement is not the same as somebody else's. And so as God began to reveal this, mind you, this is, after years of going through therapy, after years of seeking, the help that I needed to get healing, after years of going through my bouts of depression, after years of being released from those abusive relationships, after years of doing work around the repairing with the relationship between my mother and my father, with becoming the caretaker of my father, with, just the extended grace that God has provided throughout my life, even in the most hardest of places, understanding that the requirement that God needed from me was different from the revelation that I received in the church.
Okay, wait. You just dropped the bomb. You said understanding the requirement that God had for you was different than the what?
It was different from the revelation I received of the church.
You got to explain that, sis. Come on.
So a lot of the experiences that I have encountered with God has been apart from the church. They have been in my own prayer time, in my own prayer closet. They have been in watching people. They have been through the revelation of watching movies. They have been through how I serve my family. They have been through how people have shown up with me and for me in my in the places where they only knew God dropped me in their spirit to carry me in the spaces that I couldn't carry myself. And so my encounters with God has really evolved my life in such a way that it allows me to know that I am the chosen of God. And even when I was, you know, when I couldn't acknowledge God, when I didn't acknowledge God as being there, when I failed to give him the praise and the worship that he deserved, I now see how he has carried me, how he has protected me, how he has shielded me. And the requirement was getting out of my own way. The requirement was allowing him to truly heal me from the depth of my soul. See, that type of healing is different from the healing that we experience when we go to the altar at the church. It's a different type of healing because it's personal. It is private. And the word, we know that the word says that what we do in private, God will reward in public. And so what I have learned in this encounter and these experiences with God is that the things that God require of me for Jabrita, for her family, and for the responsibilities in which I carry are not just for me. They're not just for me. The requirements is for one, honor, because honor is the highest form of worship. It's coming into understanding the relationships, the access, the alignment that God has placed before me. It's honoring even the things that most people would shame, like my story. It's accepting my family as still good enough, even in their brokenness. It's understanding that I have a responsibility to serve those who cannot repay me because of the grace that has been extended to my life. So there are a number of requirements that God has whispered to Jabrita apart from the church. And so I learned these things by way of the relationship that I actually truly have with God. And it's not a Sunday relationship. It's a Sunday to Sunday type of experience. And so, that right there, sis, has truly been, the journey. I mean, I can tell you about all the lows. I can tell you about all of the encounters with abuse and all of those things, and God will still get the glory because he was with me even in those things. So
Absolutely. And when you just said that I'm good enough even in my brokenness. I've been knocked down, I've been bruised, I've been broken, but I am not destroyed because there is a grace on my life to release the glory of God. What we go through is just what we've gone through. So those experiences, and God will use it to perfect it in that day, because he that's begun a great work in you, in me, is careful to perform it to the day of Jesus Christ. So we have to be about our Father's business. We have to make sure we're doing what our fingerprints were designed to do. And on this podcast, y'all know my heart is to help some woman, somebody understand that you can thrive in every area of your life, mentally, physically, financially, and of course, spiritually, to do the things that God is calling you to do with the spirit of excellence. Now, as we get ready to close, we got to come on the upswing, because I'm telling you what, God didn't take us through anything, and none of what we've gone through has taken God by surprise. When we choose to allow faith to move forward in the things God's calling us to do, we have things like this happening. The Courage2Heal ministry has been birthed. I want to talk a little bit about minding your madness and what God has done in a little time, just a little time. It has been in birthing position for about 14 years, is what I hear you say. But what has God done? You've got to share, my sister, because we can't leave people down there, right? God has something in store. There's a reason for all of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We definitely cannot leave our sisters in the valley. That's another requirement of God. You know, we have a responsibility that when we heal, it is our responsibility to go back and to also extend the same healing to those who are in their valley. And as a result of that, you know, mine just, you know, talking a little bit about the thing that God has birthed and is birthing through me in this season, that has brought me to true transformation, is understanding mind your madness. And this is what he told me. He told me this even before I got into P2P. I just woke up one day and he dropped it in my spirit, mind your madness. And I said, okay, Lord, what is this about? I don't mind your madness. So I wrote it down. And then he began to, you know, one at a time, just kind of give me the understanding of what each of those acronyms meant. And so Mind Your Madness is a 7-step process that helps women navigate past and present trauma through mindfulness. And it's a process that God has already proven, because he proved it through me, that it works. Okay, it works. Mind Your Madness is mind your mental, mind your attitude, mind your disciplines, mind your nuances, mind your energy, mind your soul, and mind your spirit. And though that is the process, the how is on the other side, right? But God took me literally from my hell. He delivered me from my floor experience. And what you are experiencing now is the true transformation of healing, of going through my wilderness and allowing God to have full access and surrender in my situation and in my circumstances. And as a result of that, being here in P2P, being in a space, now I understand. I said this the other day. Now I understand what it means to be. Now I understand what it truly means to be in good ground, to be watered in good ground. P2P is the soil that you needed and did not know that it was the soil that was going to produce the fruit. Mind Your Madness is the fruit of this experience that I have had in P2P. It is the birthing of my calling. It is the birthing of, you know, and I'm going to say this, it is the birthing of my calling, but the reward of the hell that I endured.
Okay. Woo. I may have to have a part 2 with you. Listen, and it may just be a P2P good ground kind of conversation, because you and I have similarly gone through this program the things that God has birthed. So I'm going to leave her information in the show notes. Let me tell you, you want to get her book. She has birthed a book out of this. showing you the steps, and she has some other things that are coming. I will definitely leave all of her information in the show notes. You want to get in her community, number one, and you want to get a hold of this book, number two. And I'm telling you, you don't have to go through this alone. And I even leave in the show notes about P2P, Purpose of Platform, because you may just be wondering, God, why am I going through all of this? What is it all for? What does it even matter? And you will find your purpose. I promise you that. So I want to say a huge thank you for being the 25th episode of Raise the Praise. To share this with you, my little sister, is just brings me so much joy. And before we get off, I just want you to encourage that woman who thinks that, you know what, I've gone through all of this. I don't know if God can forgive me. I don't know if I can forgive myself. What does it all matter? I'm still hiding behind my ashes because I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to do next. How am I going to get out of this? And I think about your 23-year-old self. What would you tell her right now, Jabrita, where you are now? If you could go back and tell her, what would you tell her? And then we'll end our conversation.
I would tell her, your steps are ordered. I don't care what hell you are in. I don't care what hell is still trying to hang on to you. I don't care how messy your life looks. I don't care how broken you feel. I don't care if you don't think rescue is right at your doorstep. I want you to know that your steps are ordered. There is a requirement that God requires of all of us, and that is to take up your bed and walk. He didn't say the mattress will look pretty. He didn't say there wouldn't be any ripped scars or snares. He only asked you to pick it up and walk. And I'm reminded of a scripture, if I had this scripture in my life at this particular time. It's Ecclesiastes 3:11, and it simply says, in time, God will make all things beautiful. I am a living testament, a living testimony of the faithfulness of God and what happens. Because when God calls or have a covering over your life, nothing you do will be wasted. Nothing you go through will be unnoticed. And God will continue to order your steps. So just hang in there and trust that you are protected, you are guided, you are loved.
And with that, folks, talking about having the courage to heal, the courage to share your story, I know y'all were blessed. And once again, I want to say a huge thank you to my baby sis. She's my baby sis, y'all. I know she's grown and got her family and her own children, but she's going to always be my baby sis because God has divinely connected us. And I'm so grateful. And I'm going to leave her information in the show notes. But thank you so much for having the courage to even heal and walk through what that looks like. Because I know it wasn't always pretty, but the fact that we're able to smile and share right now to help another sister to say, hey, your steps are ordered. I love that. Thank you for once again for being on Raise the Praise. And I cannot wait to see whatever else God has in store for you, because it's just the beginning. Love you so much, sis. Thank you so much.
I love you and thank you so much. It's an honor.